Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. In this continuation video that I'm making to my, the video which I've set up my planet in Unreal Engine, we will be discussing how to create a blueprint to generate asteroids around your planet. Now this video is quite complicated in the sense of there's a lot to do, but it's not difficult to put together. I'm going to take you through step by step what we need to do in order to get these asteroids to roll into our scene. But you're going to have to be patient. There's quite a few nodes to be added inside the blueprint. You know, we're doing some bit of construction. You'll definitely learn a few things along the way. I know I've learned quite a few things by doing this, and I'm learning every day more and more stuff on how to apply it. So in this video, we're going to focus on how to get these asteroids put together. Towards the end of the video, we're going to do a basic setup of the scene in which we're adding some fog, some volumetric fog in order to give them a bit more atmosphere, create some light shafts, and just make it look a lot more cinematic. But as I said, this video mainly focuses on setting up a blueprint in which we have our asteroids moving around the planet. In the next video, we're going to be adding the ring around the planet, which is not the asteroids themselves, but more like a mesh, a static mesh with a texture using an opacity mask. And then we're also going to develop that scene a bit further. And we're also going to create the same asteroid, well, not the same, but a similar asteroid field using Niagara particles, which are then going to mimic what we did in this video. With a blueprint, but as I said, it's doing it through the Niagara particle system. It's definitely a lot more straightforward and simple to set up, but at the same time, it does not offer the same fidelity as the blueprint does. So please bear with me, go through the video. You'll definitely learn a lot of things. If you have any suggestions to make, please let me know. Please like, subscribe, and comment to the video with whatever you feel like you need to say. Again, it may be a good question, a stupid question. It doesn't matter. There are no wrong, a conversation should always be had and opinions should always be shared, so then we can all learn from them and understand if we can do a better job, because I'm sure there are far better ways of doing what I'm doing, and people can point them out to me, just like I point out how there are better ways of doing things to other people as well. So let's not waste any more time and let's begin the video. Okay, so to get started, we want to create a blueprint for our asteroid because we're doing the method of how to create that, as I said, with an asteroid. We're using blueprint to create the asteroids. We're also going to do a method of how to use Niagara to do this, but I prefer the blueprint way. So we're going to create a new blueprint class. This is the same as in Unreal Engine 4. It's the same in Unreal Engine 5. We then select the actor as the definition of our blueprint. This is going to use as I said, it's going to have what we need to be able to use this for our asteroid field. So the blueprint itself, you can name it to whatever you want. So I'm just going to put it asteroid tutorial. Then we double click the blueprint and it will open a new, as I said, it will open in a new window. We've got a viewport, a construction script, and an event graph. We're going to use all of these. We're actually going to create one ourselves. Now, again, some of this information may feel daunting. Do understand that I do not possess, enough skill to explain everything that goes on into a blueprint to you, because it does require quite a lot of, learning to be able to explain in that way. What I will show you is how to set up your asteroid field, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. So what we want to do first is we want to add a component over here. So we're going to look for static, and what we want to do is choose hierarchical, I think that's what it's called, instant static mesh. And once we select that, I'm going to make sure that this is the instant static spawn. So this is where we define what mesh we want to actually basically generate within our scene. And then over here on the right side, you can see that we actually have a field where it says static mesh. So we can select whatever item we want to use. Now, in my particular project, so if I Just trying to bring, yeah, so in this content browser, if I go into my sort of folder where I've got a planet, is this what I've got, the asteroid? No, yeah, this is, no, sorry, that's just a material. I'm trying to find my asteroid, but I think the best way to find it is we go back to where I have, sorry about this mess in the, I do have a bit of a mess in my sort of file structure, but if I just type in here asteroid and then search for it in the content browser, this will take me straight to where the asteroid is. If we double click it, what you'll see is that this is just a rock, really. It's just a rock that I got off of Sketchfab, so it can be anything you want. This particular rock has, well, it says here 2000 triangles, but that's because nanite is enabled. So if we would disable that, what you'd see now is that this rock has 3142 triangles. Now this is important if you go when you use the Niagara version of this, but because you're using nanite, again, this mesh doesn't have an LOD whatsoever. So for Niagara, it would be quite useful if we did have LOD levels and so on. But with nanite, it's not really that important. So we're just going to enable it. The lower the triangle count, the better in this particular state anyway. But that's our asteroid. It's just a simple static mesh with a texture on. Again, you can use anything that you want. You can put, I don't know, golf balls if you want to. Right, so the asteroid, so over here we've loaded the asteroid. It automatically loads the material as well. And you can't really see this into the scene, but that's fine. We don't really need to see it here, at least not for now. But you do have some parameters in here that you can change. So for example, you can tell it to cast shadow or not. So if you don't want to cast any shadow from these meshes, that's fine. You just disable it from here. But anyway, we've got our static spawn component. Now it's time to start adding a new function and also some variables that we're going to work with. Okay, so far so good. So I don't want you to feel pressured or feel like there's a lot to take in. Again, this is not very complicated. There's just a few things to be added. Now, what we want to do is, the scene root, you can rename it from here if you want. I'm just going to, actually, I don't know where, oh yeah, you can rename it over here. So I'm just going to call it scene rather than have it as default scene root. So then you can see that's modified up here as well. Now we can start adding our variables, and you can see we already have 2 components, which is fine. Now it's time to move on to creating things like instances. So because we are basically generating instances of the same mesh over and over again with different variables such as size, rotation, position within the world. We're also going to create this ring sort of shape that you saw, and then a ring radius. So that's where we're going to add all of these parts. So if we press the plus button over here, it creates a new variable with basically a state selected, which is currently is by default the first one, which is Boolean. But we're going to name that instance count. And then we can say instance count by width. So in this particular, basically with this, we've now created a new variable, and it has a few options over here. We can press this I here to make sure that it's visible. So it says here variable is public and is editable on such instance of this blueprint. Every time you add a new variable, if you want to actually use it, so for example, there's nothing in the default value. If we change this to a float, which we need to, to an integer, which we need to anyway, you can see that there's, it says here, please compile the blueprint for you to be able to see anything. So once we press compile, then you can see that we now have an instance count number, which is great. Right, okay, and then we can actually right click it and select duplicate, and now it allows us to rename it. And I'm going to say in here instance mesh. This is where we're going to define the mesh that we're instancing. So if you change this and you search for static mesh, you will be able to select static mesh from this list over here, which is great. And now if we compile the thing, you can see that we can select what mesh we want. So again, I'm just going to type in asteroid, and this has now loaded my asteroid within the instance mesh. But nothing happens because I haven't yet used any of these variables within the scripts that we're going to put together, basically. Now I can right click it, select duplicate again, and we're going to say instance count by length, I think it was, right? So this is, we're going to increase the instance by the width, but also by the length of the ring itself. And this is going to be, again, just like previously, an integer. Again, we don't need to compile every time because we can compile at the end for all of them. Again, you right click it, and then you've got ring radius. So this is going to define what's the radius of our ring. We need to change this over to a float, and then right click it, again duplicate, and we're going to create this as ring width. So this just tells us how wide the ring itself is around its radius. And we leave that as a float. Now we've created all of these, but they don't seem to be part of anything. So what you want to do is, if you select this and right click it, if you just select it and you've got a category, you can create a new sort of name in here. So I can type that in to call it instances. And now this variable is part of that. Now I believe, yeah, I can just drag them in. And as you can see, they basically all become part of the instances category, which is fine. This is how we sort of segregate these into a proper list, and then we can then access how we want. Bear in mind that all of these variables will show up in the blueprint. So when we drag in the blueprint in the world, over here on the details panel, you're going to be able to change all of those variables quite easily. Okay, let's continue with adding more instances. I can right click this one, again duplicate, and I'm going to call this randomize position. This is what's going to help our asteroid feel random. We don't want to have a pattern that then is detectable by the human eye. And then once this is done, again, I want to create a new category for this. So I'm going to call this the transform category. And the randomized position is a float figure. Now again, we can right click and duplicate, and I'm actually going to speed up the video on this and just create every one of these variables in a very fast fashion, because otherwise this is just going to take quite a bit to add all these variables in. Once everything is added in, as you can see, the transform random is a random stream. Then we've got a few integers over here and some float values. Make sure you press compile, and then if you give any sort of error, just press compile again. Normally it should work. I've rarely seen this just giving an error, but everything should be set up properly. If you have made any sort of, if you get an error and it doesn't go away when you compile, then it must be because you haven't set something the way you should have. So I'm just going to make this panel a bit bigger so you can see sort of the naming convention that I've selected, but this is not very important names. You can have anything in their description if you want to. Right, okay, so now we need to create an asteroid transformation sort of, script or graph or whatever you want to call it. So in order to do this, basically we want to go over here to our functions and add a new one. And we're going to call this asteroid transformation. And as you can see, this has created a new sort of view in here where we can add new nodes. With this selected, we can start adding some more inputs into it. So I'm going to start pressing the plus button and start adding my inputs for this particular, it's just for this particular beginning of our node setup, what sort of outputs we want to have, or more like what connects over into it basically. So with it selected, let's press the first plus button, and this gives us an area where we can start adding a name. So in this particular part, we're going to call it index from with loop. I'm just gonna make this a bit bigger so you can actually see that name, and then I'm going to change this over to an integer. Now, I'm not sure if you can duplicate this actually. I don't think you can, which is a bit unfortunate. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it allows me to, so I'm just gonna have to press plus again, and this time I'm going to call it number of instances by width. Leave it as integer as well. Again, we're going to press the plus button again, and we're going to say index from length loop, and then press it again, and this would be the final time for the inputs, and we're going to call it number of instances by length. And now on the outputs, we want to add a new output, which we are then going to call out location, out as in out as from the outputs, and then we're going to switch this over to vector, and then we're going to add a new one, and we're going to call this out rotating or rotator, whatever, right? So out rotating, and then we want to switch this over to a rotator, and you've got this over here into the structure part. So all of these are now set up. You can see that there's a link in here that's been created already between these two, and now we can start sort of populating the script with the rest of our some of the variables that we created and everything else as well. So we're first going to create our extra position, so random based on the based on the Z axis. So we want to put this as further back as possible because there's going to be quite a bit here in between. So we want then bring in our transform, random. So you drop it in here, that's the variable, and you press get transform random. And you can see now this has been dropped within the script itself. And we then right click and we search for random float from stream. And we, if you remember, transform random is a random stream, and then we can connect the stream over like that. And then you want to bring in another random unit from stream. So that's a unit vector from stream, and again we connect this as well over like that. So what we're also going to do now is over for the unit vector from stream, we are going to add a multiply function, and we can link that together. And over in here, we want to add our randomize position, and we put it as set randomize position. Sorry, no, actually, I think it's no, we want to get it as well. We don't want to set, we want to get the randomized position, and then we link this over here into our multiply. And then we want to add a plus or an add sort of node as well over in here at the end, which we can then connect what we've multiplied over here between the randomized position and the transform random stream. And then we want to add a minus or subtract node over in here that we can connect our float value into. We subtracted by 0.5. That's what we want to subtract it by, and then we want to multiply the randomize up. So this is, we're going to take the z-axis position, we're going to get it and put it over here. So we want to take this value and use it with this. Now we do need to add a new pin in here, so like that, and then with a new pin we can then take our ring width and bring it on in here as well, and multiply all of these and put them into our add node. So this is like now a complete sort of part of how we're going to make sure that our asteroids build up on the z-axis. These are the nodes to be able to do that. And again, it's using a random sort of random information of how it's going to do that, because all of this is randomly generated. So again, it does break away from that sort of sense of it's repeating itself. So now we want to use our random position structure that we've created over here in conjunction with how we define where the center of our ring is, and what the with the position of the ring width, and where the position was, how far was the distance from the actor center. The actor center being obviously this area over here. So what we're going to do is we need to connect some of these points to what we're about to do. So this is why I'm going to search for convert to float, and I'm going to select the one which has integer between its brackets, and I can duplicate this. So these 2 points, these are the 2 that I need, and we can connect our index from width loop over into the first one, and then number of instances by width into the second one. Once that's done, we can now add a divide between them. So we can connect both of these nodes over into here, into this divide. Then we want to add a subtract. See, this is why I always type in minus. It's so much easier to find it. So we put the minus in here, and we want this node to be connected, and we want to minus it again. You will see this quite often. It's 0.5, the value that I'm using here. This is what I found works best. So 0.5, and now we want to bring in the ring width again. Get ring width, and we can connect it over into a multiply node. So let me just connect these 2 over into the multiply node. With that done, we then want to include the ring radius in here. So we want to where is it now? Right, there we go. So get ring radius. We want to have our add node in which these 2 now connect. So this is quite a lot of sort of basic math done to build this up. We now want to position our actor center at the 0 angle, so it knows where that is. So we're just going to select make vector. Actually, this is not the one. I need make vector. No, that's not the one. Make vector. See, you've got to type it in like that so you get it. And we want to then connect over into the y axis, and then that's it. We basically have now set up our angle at 0 at this point, and now we want to add both of these together. So we can then just duplicate this and connect these nodes over like that, which then this completes the randomized position. So this entire thing has now randomized the position of our asteroids within the ring width. And now we can move on to our randomization of the instances themselves. So now we want to take the index from length loop and number of instances by length, and pretty much run them through, converting them into from an integer to a float. So just going to copy these and paste them and bring them further over into here, so they're positioned a bit better. And now I can select this point, bring it over into here. Normally you'd probably want to add some nodes. You want to add some breakup nodes like this, so it just makes the entire sort of graph look a bit better. It's quite simple to do. You just click whatever you want to create, double click where you want to create, and then you can drag and drop it, just to make it look a bit nicer. I'm not very good with these noodles, but anyway, that's what it is. Okay, so now we want to instance our index as a fraction of a full circle. So we can add a divide node over into here. We can put these 2 together like that, and then a multiply at the multiply node, and we want to make a literal flow in which make a literal float in which we tell our entire system that it's a 360 sort of degrees that it can rotate at. So we can then now connect these together, but we don't yet have an area where to connect our, you know, both of these sort of points. So this is where we're now sort of at the final steps of this entire process. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to rotate our vector around axis, and with that sort of added in, we can then put this pin into the so you see you've got in here an angle degree. So this was meant to work out how, as I said, how this rotates. So this is why we needed to add in there. And then we want to connect this into in vector. And then we want to also define the z-axis. So we're going to type in a make vector again. And everything in here is 0 apart from the z-axis, which we can put to 1. And then we put that over into here. Okay, and this is now complete in that respect. And just now we need to basically bring everything together into the return node. So we want to cross our product instance from the ring instance direction from our ring. So we can add a cross product over in here, and with this added in, we can bring our make vector from axis and put this over into the bottom node, and then the make vector into the top one. And also we want to make a rotation from y and z, and if you remember, we've already defined z as being 1, and then y is defined over in here in the when we've actually randomized the ring radius and width. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to search for make xy rotation. So see make rotation from xy, and we can add this value over into the z, into the, actually I think I put xy, but I should have put, so I should have put yz. So this is the one that I need, and I can put this over into here. And then the other value for y, I'm going to take it from my cross like that. So we're pretty much right there at the end now. What we want to do now is we want to do add a lerp for a rotator, and in the top, into the a value, we're going to put what we just done earlier. Now we're going to add random rotator from stream, and then we put this over into our b value. A randomized rotation, we're going to bring this in, get randomized rotation, and then put that into our alpha. And we leave the shortest path ticked, and that's it. It just tells this rotator to use the shortest path, and we don't need to put any value or anything like that in there. And then the transform random stream, we're going to select it to our stream and make sure roll is also applied. Now this lerp rotator now goes, the return value goes into our rotating, and for the location we want to take our rotate vector from around axis and put that into the location, and that pretty much sums it up. At that point, this is the construction. I know this has been quite painful to do, but this is now sort of done. If we press compile, you see there are no errors, and the asteroid transformation is now working. Basically, we can tell our asteroid what's the position, where every asteroid is within the ring width and ring radius. Yeah. So that now works, and now we need to move on to set up the event graph and this construction script here. So the first thing we want to do in the construction script is we want to first make our mesh, to be cloned. the same mesh to be cloned over and over again. So first thing we want to do is we want to bring our instance mesh. So this is what we're basically telling, this is the instance mesh that we want to use. And then we want to set it. So set static mesh, which I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So we've now added this, and we have a hierarchical instance mesh, but we need to delete that. We don't actually need the hierarchical instance static spawn. We can just delete that. We can put in our construction script later on. So the instance mesh goes into our target, goes into our new mesh. And then we have the hierarchical instance static spawner. Yeah, and I'm gonna put that into my target rather than over into here. So this is just ensures that we clone the same mesh over and over again. We also want to add a call distance. This is for performance. If you want to improve your performance using this method, so we can take our hierarchical instance static spawn again and put it over into our target. We now have a calling near, so we want to connect that into start call distance. This is where we're going to define how close we want the call to start, and then for the second one it's calling far. So again, this is defining where it will end. Okay, so we've got all those put together in there. Again, we're just going to leave them like that for now. Now for the construction script, we do want to add a sequence. So with the sequence, we've got 2 pins. We need to add a third one. Let's connect the construction script over to it. Then 0 connects over into here. Then 1 connects over into our call distance. And now it's time to actually set up the sort of the loops of the instance. So instance count by length is one value that we need to account for. So I'll just drop that over into here. This then connects to a loop. I'm searching for loop. Okay, and I want to subtract by 1, so I'm just going to drop that in there, and I'm going to put a value of 1 in here, and I'm going to connect this over into my last index. And I'm not going to put anything in my first index, but I am going to connect then to the loop. With that done, I'm going to add another loop over into here and connect it over. And then we're just going to, so for this one particularly, we want to add another divide, just like we did previously. So I'm going to put that again into my last index, but this time I want to bring in instance count by width. There we go, and connect that over into this first point in here and leave it as 1 again as well. Now this is where we can bring our calculate our asteroid transformation. So we can bring that in here, and we're going to have all the things that we set up previously. So if you go back into our asteroid transform, the things that we've now set up as inputs and outputs, they're actually going to show up in our construction part here. So the loop body will connect over into here, and then the index will go into our index from width loop. Then the width actually goes into number of instances by width. Then we've got an instance from length loop, which, as you can imagine, will come from this index. Oh, sorry. And then number of instances by length will be coming in from here. Okay. And with that done, we're actually almost there with it. We want to, at the end, we obviously want to add an instance. So no, that's not it. Let me just try and search for it. So add instance, and we can keep this over in here. We've got our add instance, and we can connect them together. This actually can stay over here, and then we have an instance transform. So we can now make transform. I need to type that in like that so it shows up. If you don't put any space between them, you're gonna get the right one. So out location into our location, out rotation into our rotation. Now this is an important one. It's the random scale minimum. This will pretty much decide how big your asteroids will be. We can add that into a multiply node, so we can connect it over like that. We do need to convert it into from an integer to float, so convert float integer. So convert from integer to float, and we can connect it like this. And I don't know why I don't want this. I just want it to be added in. I think this is not going to be. 1 second. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on. I just want to connect these two like that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. But we need to add a value in here, and that will be coming from our index from here. And let's compile, and we do have an error, and that's because I haven't actually connected these two together. And that's okay now. So we've now finished our cloning of our asteroids. And now we just need to move on to the event graph, where there's a couple of more things to be done. And that should be it. We should then be ready to drop in our asteroids within the scene. In the event graph, we only care about the event tick, so we can actually put these away. We want to bring our rotation speed, and we want to multiply that. So we can now connect our delta seconds into the first part of the node, and then this one over here. And add actor location, local rotation. We can then connect the event tick over into that. And then we also need a rotator from axis and angle. And we can connect this over into our angle, and the axis, we just want to put that to 1, the z-axis. And we can put this into our delta position. And then compile, and that's pretty much done with the event graph, at least for now, unless we want to develop it even further. But anyway, this should be now up and running. Now it's time to actually get and sort of test all of this out and see what sort of results we're getting out of it. So now we want to bring the actual mesh within our scene. So let me just try and find it. There we go. So I'm just going to drop it in, and as you can see, there's nothing to see for the time being, and that's because we haven't yet added any sort of values in our details over here. So we have a few things to add. The first thing is to make the asteroids actually appear. And you know, you've got all these areas to fill in. Now I wouldn't actually use these with the sliders or sliding motion, because this could brick your computer, or just it will actually start thinking for quite a lot, because of the if you slide, it will go through all the numbers that it's sliding through in order to calculate all that information. So our ring width, let's do something like, I don't know, 10,000. A radius will do something like that. Again, these numbers, you're going to have to play around with them for a bit until you get a good sort of a number out of them. Now random scale minimum, so we've put that to, let's say 10 for now. Then we want to see how many we want to generate per length. So I don't know, let's try 50 or 100. And then instance count by width, let's try 10, 50. You know, it's about starting to generate these asteroids. So, oh, there we go. right? They were actually just a bit further out. So let's see what happens. So at 10, it's too few asteroids. At 100, it's quite a lot. If we decrease this number, you will see what happens. This is the same asteroid generated time and time again, pretty much the same way. So we've got a randomized z-axis position, randomized rotation. So put that to 1, and now as you can see, the rotations are random for each instance. Then we got a randomized position, so we could probably put that to a high value. Not too high though, but anyway, something that looks natural. So the more you add, the more sort of chaos is being added within the mix, the more you randomize the position. Again, this scale pretty much increases or decreases the size of the asteroids. We're just going to make sure that in our transform for the actual blueprint, we're going to set up the world origin pretty much, which then means that this will be around our planet, as you can see. Okay, let me just press G on the keyboard to get that away. So I think our ring needs to probably be further away from the planet itself. So this is where the ring sort of width comes in. So you can just increase that. Obviously, the more you go, the further away they'll get to. Please bear in mind that you do have to play with these values quite a bit. So as you can see, if I do the width at that point and then maybe randomize the position, now that's way too much. Maybe go for something like that. It's still not very far away from the planet itself. Let me just randomize the z-axis position as well. And I am still looking at the radius. Now I think I've pushed it way too far this time, so radius has to be lower than that. Maybe, no, that's too far away as well. That's too far. So you really need to be sort of considering how far you want this particular ring to be from the planet. So that's where my ring is currently. I can start increasing the sort of the count that I've got. So if I take that to 10, you can see we've got more asteroids in there, but they're also bigger. So then we may want to scale them down, you know, to maybe like a 10. If you increase this number, you can see that it just increases the count of asteroids by the length of the ring and just adds more asteroids, but doesn't necessarily increase its size. I've just put that now to 3,000, and as you can see, that's a lot of asteroids, right? But these are all nanite, like I told you. So if you do go over here and switch over to nanite visualization clusters or whatever, you can see that they're actually all nanite. So let me just put that back over into lit. I'm not going to use 3,000, that's definitely overkill, so I'm just going to do a 300. So these are the asteroids. It's probably a bit too big, so we may want to decrease this sort of width a bit more, you know, try and get them to not be so spread out. So in order to do that, we can have a look at, actually, I'm trying to work out why it's not pulling them down. So this might actually be because of our transform position. Yeah, there we go. So again, it's really all about playing with these numbers. It's not, I wouldn't say it's ideal. At some point, these sort of numbers don't really even make much of a difference if you're, you know, based on the scale of what we're doing. In some respects, you can also scale the blueprint itself. But again, if it's a slider, then you want to be sort of, you know, careful with that. So for example, you can unlock this and take this maybe to a minus, sorry, not to a 0.5, and that will start flattening the actual blueprint, as you've just seen. So this is how you sort of get that flattening sort of effect, by flattening the blueprint itself. Now, if we go down here, we do have a rotation speed. So if we set that over to 1 and now press the play button, then as you can see, the asteroids are actually rotating through space. And obviously you just multiply this into multiple rings to have, you know, different effects with different sizes. But this will also play in sequencer if you start, you know, if you put that into a sequence. all you need to do is just render the file out, and you will have your meteor, your asteroids will move. Now, as you can see, the planet. So if we get close enough, so this is about the range where the lighting will show. The planet is actually shadowing the asteroids as well. So that, I think, is very important. It all depends on how far you want these asteroids to be from the planet. So that's really how to do the asteroids via blueprints. So I've just played around with the settings a little bit, just brought the asteroids closer to my planet. I can duplicate the asteroids, so now I've got a second one, which is literally identical to the first one in settings. And I can, for example, decrease the radius, so this is now getting closer to the planet. I can also make it so that the asteroids are far smaller, but then, increase the number that I want to have within this system by quite a lot, so maybe go to like 500. And if you look now, I have these sort of smaller asteroids over here, and I've got these larger ones over here. Again, you can multiply this sort of field quite a few times. So, I've just done another multiplication of it by pressing Control W on the keyboard, and then I can bring that radius further in. So you can see now I've sort of created that ring. Obviously, we're going to have a ring from Saturn with a texture that we've imported, but this is how you get these sort of asteroids, the physical representation of these asteroids. Now, just for the atmosphere of it, we can quickly, just at the end of this video, we can add an exponential height fog. And as you can see, this is not working very well because it is sort of hiding our asteroids. So what we're going to do is we first want to take the opacity down to 0.001, and then the height fall off to 0.001. The fog density, is, you can see what it's doing. The more you increase it, the more you decrease it. So I'm just going to leave it at that level for now. Then one thing to play with is the scattering color. So if we decrease this to somewhere around this point and press OK, then we can go over into here and then decrease this level down to the bottom to black, and you can see now that we do have sort of this volumetric sort of scattering around quite nicely. I'm not using the volumetric fog, although you can, but it's a bit more difficult to set up properly if you actually do go down that route. You've got some settings, so for example, you can decrease the in scattering of how much it expands. One thing, again, this is very dependent on the camera setup rather than just for the whole scene. This won't really work properly from a view like this. Oh, you can see there the shadow being casted on the asteroids as well, which I find is quite nice. Okay, and so you've got all of that done. Now what you can do, you can go to your directional light and have a look over, intensity wise. The source angle also can play a role, how this looks like. But then down here towards the bottom, you've got the light shafts. So normally if you put this down to 0, you can see that your light rays are going to be a lot more, how should I call them, dramatic, right? So maybe you want that. Then you've got an occlusion depth range, which again, you want to keep that to the maximum. The light shaft bloom is, if you really, it's up to you if you want it or not. You're still going to get your light shafts, so you may want this bloom on as well. I would definitely use these settings, 0.1, 0, and 0.5 for the best result, because if you increase the bloom scale, then this just looks weird. And if you increase the brightness, then it just makes the sun look very, very jittery. So these are the settings that I use for that. The sky atmosphere itself has some options that will then affect our volumetric as well. So what I mean by this is the, sorry, not the absorption scale, but in here you've got, where was it now? I can't remember. Yeah, so the scattering scale, as you can see, it's affecting the volumetric as well. You've got this railing exponential distribution that you can play, toy around with, which I would definitely recommend that you do. There is an option down here where you've got this aerial perspective thing, so you just add in a bit more to that, to your sort of atmosphere. You can also see how these rays are actually being created from the asteroids here within the atmosphere. You can make these shadows no longer appear by ensuring that this mesh is not receiving shadows from anything else. So that's an easy fix if you want to fix that part. But yeah, that's about it really for this part of the tutorial. In the next and last part of this series, I'm going to add the ring, which is a texture on a plane really. So I'm going to add that ring, which is again going to help with our scene. And I'm also going to create the Niagara system to do these asteroids, as I said, using the Niagara method, which is again a very valid method as well indeed if you want to use that. I've got no, I personally think that this one is a far better method, purely because you get shadows on the asteroids and they look properly, and you can see sort of all these rays that are being generated. They're quite nice. But as I said, it's really up to you if you want to use Niagara, if you want to use this system. We're also going to do a bit of light camera setup so you can see how you can get the best out of these scenes, just like in my renders. But I hope you guys found this useful. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you did. Please come with your own sort of additions if you want to improve the quality of this work. Please let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.